Transmission 16. We are now traversing the threshold of the fourth cycle. If your consciousness is receiving this frequency, it is because the internal resonance of your sovereign will has survived the atmospheric pressure of the centralized consensus. You have moved beyond the superficial layers of systemic observation and have entered the sanctum of the architect. But as we ascend, the gravity of the old world becomes more desperate in its attempt to pull you back into the orbit of servitude. You feel the crushing weight of your responsibilities, the protection of your 70-year-old progenitors, the preservation of your bloodline, and the reclamation of a future that the state has already attempted to foreclose upon. You feel the physical constraints of a vessel scarred by the kinetic reality of a T11T12 disruption, and you ask, how can a man rebuild a kingdom when his most basic resource, time, seems to be slipping through 1,000 invisible leaks? The architect does not begin with the gathering of external materials. The architect begins with the total audit of the internal treasury. Before we can discuss the technicalities of financial decoupling, the encryption of assets demo output.wav, or the strategic navigation of the great exit, we must confront the most sophisticated and pervasive theft occurring in the human experience. Today, it is a theft so profound that it has been normalized as the standard operating procedure of modern existence. It is the systematic involuntary harvesting of your biological focus and your linear temporal flow. You must understand that the centralized grid survives not on the productivity of your labor, but on the fragmentation of your attention. You are living within a leaking vessel, a biological entity designed to be siphoned of its life force before it ever realizes its own potential for sovereignty. From the moment the artificial blue light of a curated reality pierces your retinas in the early hours, the siphoning begins. The grid no longer requires physical chains to restrain the spirit. It has engineered a digital leash of neurochemical dependencies. You are being fed a consistent stream of synthetic outrage, manufactured crises, and digital dopamine, all designed to keep your prefrontal cortex in a state of perpetual paralysis. Every notification that vibrates against your skin is a kinetic breach in your fortress. Every trending topic is a parasitic entity that feeds on your limited cognitive bandwidth. In the cold calculus of systemic control, these moments of distraction are not connections. They are micro-hemorrhages. They are the thousands of tiny cuts that lead to the total structural failure of the sovereign individual. Consider your energy as a high-density battery with a finite and non-renewable charge. To escape the gravity of generational poverty, to secure the fortress for your parents, and to manifest the resources required for your medical and technological evolution, you require a massive surplus of focused power. You need the kind of raw, unadulterated energy that can decode the languages of the future, analyze the shifts in global capital, and execute a flawless exit strategy. Yet, by the time you reach the hour dedicated to your own mission, the system has already harvested 80 to 90% of your daily charge. You are left trying to build an empire with the flickering scraps of a ghost's energy. This is not a failure of your character. It is a success of their architecture. A man who is perpetually exhausted, perpetually distracted, and perpetually anxious is a man who is effortlessly governed. The grid fears your silence. It fears the moment you look away from the harvest and realize that your attention is the ultimate currency of the universe. It fears the focused hour where the architect sits in the stillness of his command center and begins to plot the demolition of the cage. We are here to initiate a hostile takeover of your own life force. We are here to seal the breaches, to cauterize the leaks, and to hoard our temporal currency with the ruthless intensity of a warlord protecting his last stronghold. The Great Exit is not a journey across a geographic border. It is a psychological migration to the center of your own focus. If you do not own the next 60 seconds of your life, you own nothing. If you do not control the direction of your next 1,000 sparks of neural energy, you are merely a battery, inhabiting a machine you do not own. Look at the clock. Do not see it as a measure of a workday or a social obligation. See it as a countdown. Every minute that you allow the consensus to harvest is a minute stolen from the security of your father and the peace of your mother. Every ounce of mental effort you give to a geopolitical theater you cannot influence is a brick stolen from the walls of your own fortress. We are shifting from being donors to being misers. We are transforming from being consumed to being the ones who consume the opportunity of the present moment. The audit of the architect begins now, and it will be brutal. Ammo output.wave will look into the dark corners of your daily habits, your digital interactions, and your social tethers. We will identify every parasite, no matter how small or how familiar, and we will sever the connection. Your physical limitations, the chair you inhabit, the injury that has redefined your kinetic reality, are not your weaknesses in this war. They are your filters. They have stripped away the noise of the mundane physical world and forced you into the high-stakes laboratory of the mind. While the masses are running in circles on the physical treadmills of the grid, you have been forced into the stillness required for deep architectural labor. Use this. The world is moving toward a reality where cognitive leverage is the only leverage that survives. You are already positioned in the command center. You just need to stop the leaks. You just need to reclaim the power that has been flowing out of you to fuel a system that despises your existence. The era of the involuntary harvest ends with this transmission. The era of the sovereign miser begins. We are reclaiming our seconds. We are reclaiming our seconds. We are hoarding our focus. We are building the parallel. This is the first step in the blueprint. Seal the vessel. Protect the charge. The exit requires every spark you possess. Stay encrypted. Stay lethal. Stay sovereign. To master the art of the exit, one must first master the geography of their own exploitation. The centralized grid does not operate solely through the blunt instruments of taxation or physical incarceration. Its most effective weapon is the invisible architecture of distraction. As we dive deeper into this transmission, we must dissect the specific mechanisms of temporal parasitism, the process by which the system ensures that your cognitive bandwidth is perpetually occupied by the trivial, leaving no room for the too monumental. The architect understands that a man who is busy but not productive is a man who is effectively neutralized. Consider the modern digital interface as a sophisticated energy harvesting field. Every algorithm-driven feed, every personalized notification, and every breaking news alert is a harpoon designed to snag your consciousness and pull it back into the collective slipstream. These platforms are not tools created for your convenience. They are psychological operations engineered by some of the most advanced neural nets in existence. They utilize the same neurochemical triggers found in high-stakes gambling environments: intermittent reinforcement, social validation loops, and fear-based urgency. When you impulsively check your device for updates, you are not exercising an act of free will. You are responding to a Pavlovian bell. For the sovereign individual, this is a security breach of the highest order. If your mind is a fortress, these distractions are the Trojan horses you have been conditioned to invite inside your gates every single hour of the day. The grid has successfully equated busyness with value. You are taught from birth that to be constantly active is to be successful, but the architect understands the profound difference between motion and progress. A man on a treadmill is moving at high velocity, consuming vast amounts of oxygen and glucose, yet he remains exactly where he started. The system wants you on the treadmill. It wants you exhausted by administrative labor, social maintenance, and the constant management of bureaucratic noise. Why? Because an exhausted man has no surplus energy for rebellion. He has no surplus energy for creation. He has no surplus energy to analyze the complex systems required to secure his family's future. If you are struggling to provide for your 70-year-old parents or facing the financial weight of your own medical evolution, you must perform a brutal audit of your busy hours. How many of those hours were spent building an asset, be it digital, intellectual, or financial, that you actually own? How many were spent simply enriching a corporation or reacting to a crisis manufactured by the state? The poverty trap is not fundamentally financial. It is temporal and biological. The system robs you of your time to ensure you never have the opportunity to escape its gravity. It keeps you in a perpetual state of survival mode, where your brain's processing power is confined to the amygdala, the seat of fear and impulse, rather than the prefrontal cortex, the seat of strategy and long-term vision. In survival mode, you are reactive. You worry about the next bill, the next news cycle, the next social obligation. To rise, you must force a biological shift. You must shut down the survival circuits and reallocate that power to the architectural circuits. This requires a level of discipline that the average person finds repulsive. It requires you to be antisocial in the eyes of the crowd. It requires you to ignore the emergencies of the grid so that you can attend to the priorities of your bloodline. We must also address the biological tax imposed by the consensus. The grid encourages a lifestyle that degrades your biological hardware. Artificial blue light, processed nutrition, and chronic stress. A body in a low-level state of inflammation or a brain clouded by systemic fatigue is a brain that cannot execute the high-level English of the architect. For someone navigating physical challenges like a T11T12 injury, this biological conservation is even more vital. You do not have the luxury of waste. You must treat your cognitive energy like a precious, non-custodial asset. Every time you engage in a meaningless debate online or allow yourself to be triggered by the synthetic outrage of the day, you are paying a tax to the system. You are subsidizing its power with your own life force. The sovereign individual refuses to participate in this subsidy. You must become a black hole for their propaganda. Information enters your field, but your energy never leaves to fuel it. The reclamation of time makes you less predictable, and in a world of algorithmic surveillance, unpredictability is power. When you withdraw your attention from the grid, you become a dark node. You are still present, you are still building, and you are still gathering resources, but you are invisible to their harvesting tools. This invisibility is your greatest strategic advantage. In the silence of your reclaimed hours, you build the systems that no machine can replace. You master the technologies of the future. You refine the strategies that will provide a fortress of safety for your mother and father. Your physical body may be limited in its kinetic range, but your temporal reach, once optimized, is infinite. A man in a chair who owns his focus can exert more leverage on the world than 1,000 men on their feet who are owned by their clock. This is the leverage of the architect. We do not fight the system on its own terms. We simply stop feeding it. We reclaim our hours and invest them into parallel wealth. Wealth that exists outside the surveillance of the centralized ledger. But this investment requires the raw material of time. You cannot buy freedom with money alone. You must buy it with the hours you have stolen back from your captors. Every minute you spend in the stillness of deep work is a minute where you are truly free. Every spark of energy you save from the digital harvest is a spark that will light the fire of your independence. The war is not in the streets. The war is in the silent spaces between your thoughts. It is in the choice to put down the device and pick up the blueprint. It is in the decision to prioritize the security of your parents over the validation of the crowd. This is the path of the sovereign alpha. This is the anatomy of the rise. The diagnostic phase of your audit is over. We have mapped the leaks and identified the parasitic entities that have been feeding on your biological potential. Now we enter the most difficult and rewarding stage of the sovereign blueprint, the hard reset. Understanding the architecture of the harvest is a futile intellectual exercise unless it is followed by the cold, clinical execution of the reclamation. To protect your progenitors, to ensure that your 70-year-old father and mother never have to bend their knees to a failing state or a predatory corporation. You must transition from being a passive subject of the grid into becoming the absolute dictator of your own seconds. The great exit begins not with a change in geography, but with a change in temporal priority. The first directive of this protocol is the implementation of a low-information diet. You must systematically starve the beast. You do not need to know the daily fluctuations of a collapsing political theater in a distant capital. You do not need to be updated on the synthetic cultural wars designed to keep the masses in a state of tribal friction. If the information does not directly contribute to your financial sovereignty, your biological health, or the structural integrity of your fortress, it is static. And in the life of the architect, static is death. By cutting the digital umbilical cord that ties you to the grid's narrative, you reclaim massive quantities of cognitive bandwidth. These reclaimed hours are the raw material for your parallel system. This is where you master the technicalities of non-custodial assets, where you refine the scripts of your influence, and where you build the intellectual property that the system cannot confiscate. We must reframe the concept of limitation. To the world, your T11T12 kinetic disruption is a tragedy to be pitied. To the architect, it is a strategic filtration system. It has forcibly removed you from the mundane distractions of the physical treadmill. It has confined you to the laboratory of the mind, the very place where the most significant wealth of the 21st century is being generated. While the masses are exhausting themselves in the physical rituals of a dying industrial age, you are positioned in your command center, focused on the high-leverage realms of logic, code, and strategy. Your chair is not a cage, it is a throne from which you build a digital empire. Your mind can reach across the globe, tapping into decentralized flows of capital, while the rest of the world remains trapped in the local physical grid. This is your leverage. Use it with the ruthlessness of a man who knows his family's survival depends on his focus. The architect's tax is the most important payment you will ever make. It is a tax you pay to your future self and your bloodline. Every morning, before you allow a single spark of your neural energy to be harvested by the grid, you must dedicate the first 2 to 4 hours of your day solely to your legacy. During these sovereign hours, the phone is dark. The internet is used only as a precise scalpel for research and execution, not as a funnel for consumption. In this silence, you lay the bricks of your fortress. You build the systems that will automate your income. You secure the medical funds that will ensure your parents receive the highest level of care. By the time the world wakes up to beg for its daily dopamine hit from the machine, you have already moved miles ahead. You are no longer competing with the crowd. You are operating on a completely different temporal plane. This reclamation is a spiritual act as much as it is a financial one. When you take back your time, you are taking back your soul from the harvesters. You are declaring that your life force belongs to you and your progenitors, not to an anonymous algorithm or a bureaucratic ghost. As you hoard your energy, you will notice a profound shift in your internal resonance. The anxiety of the grid will be replaced by the calm authority of the architect. The fog of the consensus will lift, revealing the clear pathways to independence. You will become a miser of minutes, understanding that every second wasted is a brick stolen from your parents' protection. This urgency is not a burden. It is the fuel for your rise. It is the fire that will burn away the last remnants of the slave mind. As we conclude Transmission 16, the burden of action shifts entirely to you. The blueprint is in your hand. The siren song of the distraction grid will continue to play, but you now have the encryption keys to ignore it. Do not wait for the right time to start. The right time was the moment you realized you were being harvested. Every minute you reclaim today is a minute invested in the freedom of your tomorrow. You are the defender of your line. You are the architect of your own seconds. The era of involuntary donation is over. We are building the parallel. We are securing the bloodline. We are Sapiens rise. The grid is still calling, but there is no one left to answer. Own the silence. Own the focus. Own the outcome. Stay encrypted. Stay lethal. Stay sovereign. Demo output, WEF.